Look closely at the rich. You'll notice something strange. They wear cheap shirts on purpose, old shoes by design. They sit in ordinary cafes, drive modest cars, speak softly in crowded rooms, and you think it's humility. You think it's wisdom, but it's not. It's protection. The rich love pretending to be poor because it shields their power. It lets them walk among you unnoticed. It makes them invisible by choice. But when the poor adopt the same disguise, it doesn't shield them, it erases them, it turns them into ghosts. And here's the truth no one dares to say out loud. If you look poor, the world assumes you are powerless. And once they assume that, they treat you accordingly, like you don't matter, like you don't exist. You've seen it happen. A man walks into a meeting wearing an outdated suit. His posture is sharp, his mind even sharper, but no one listens. They assume he has nothing to offer. They see the wrinkles, the worn shoes, the off-brand watch, and they decide without a word that he is irrelevant, that his ideas must be cheap because his appearance is. A woman speaks with conviction on a street corner. She speaks the truth, but her voice trembles, her clothes hang loose, and so they mock her. They laugh. They call her mad, not because her mind is broken, but because her image is. A worker in a factory solves problems faster than his manager, but no one notices. His hands are dirty, his shirt is stained, his power is buried under the appearance of labor, and so he remains unseen. This is the cruelty of the world you live in. Power is not just earned, it must be performed. You must look like someone worth obeying before anyone will listen to you. The rich understand this law, and they exploit it mercilessly. They know that once power is secured, once wealth, networks, and influence are in place, they can afford to disappear. They can wear the mask of poverty, and people will still kneel. A billionaire in sandals is seen as wise. A poor man in sandals is seen as lazy. The same outfit, the same silence, the same simplicity, but two completely different judgments. Because context is everything, power changes the meaning of your actions, and when you have none, you are judged at face value. Most people never realize how quickly the world categorizes them. Every day the eyes around you scan, calculate, and sort. You are a product on a shelf, and your packaging decides if you're picked or ignored. It doesn't matter how kind you are, how brilliant your ideas might be, or how noble your soul is. If you look like nothing, you will be treated like nothing. And worse, if you try to play humble before you've tasted power, you will be stepped over, used, and forgotten. Because in this world, invisibility is not safety, it is death. And the poor who try to look modest only accelerate their own disappearance. The rich don't wear old clothes because they have to. They do it to control perception, to disarm envy, to study the crowd without being watched themselves, to lower defenses while maintaining leverage. It is a chess move. But the poor? They wear the same clothes as a surrender, as an unconscious apology for existing without wealth. They tell themselves, at least I'm not flashy, at least I'm not arrogant. But the truth is, they're invisible. No one fears them, no one envies them, no one listens, and in a world ruled by appearance, that is the same as being powerless. And here's what they don't teach you in school. Humility is only respected when it's voluntary. When a man with the power to conquer chooses silence, it is seen as strength. But when a man is silent because he fears rejection, it is seen as weakness. When a queen walks barefoot through her garden, it is called grace. But when a servant does the same, it is expected. No admiration, no applause, just indifference. The same act, two meanings. That's the trap. And if you don't understand it, if you mimic the image of the powerful without their status, your disguise will not protect you, it will destroy you. So ask yourself, who taught you that modesty was virtue? Who told you to hide, to shrink, to never show what you have, even if it's all you've got? You've been trained to disappear, conditioned to believe that blending in is noble. But what if that belief is the very reason you're still struggling? What if you've been lied to? What if looking poor on purpose is not a sign of humility, but a fast track to irrelevance? They didn't get rich by hiding. They got rich, then they hid. That's the sequence most people never see. You look at the quiet billionaire, the one wearing joggers and a t-shirt, and you think, he's humble. That's why he made it. But you've been fooled. He's not hiding because he's weak. He's hiding because he's already conquered the battlefield. The rich don't use modesty as a virtue. They use it as a weapon, a camouflage, a cloak to move undetected. And if you try to mimic that cloak before you've won your war, you'll vanish in plain sight, because the disguise that shields the powerful becomes a death sentence for those without leverage. Understand this. When the rich wear poverty, it's theater, it's calculated misdirection, it lowers expectations, it softens enemies, it invites trust. You let your guard down around a man in worn jeans, not realizing he owns the building you're standing in. His watch costs more than your car, but it's hidden under a rolled-up sleeve. His silence speaks louder than your desperation, and the world listens. Why? Because he's not performing poverty, he's choosing it, and choice is the difference. The rich use appearance as a mask they can remove at will. The poor wear it as skin they cannot shed. This is how power plays out in real time. A wealthy investor arrives in sandals and an old hoodie. No one questions him. He's eccentric. He's authentic. The press calls it genius. The boardroom calls it charm. Meanwhile, a job applicant arrives in the same attire. He's labeled unprepared, lazy, unserious. One man's rebellion is another man's rejection. And that's the invisible line you must see. Camouflage only works when you've already secured your position, when your power is obvious, even when hidden. If you haven't built anything yet, modesty becomes a lie the world punishes you for. You're told to be like them, to downplay what you have, to reject flashiness, to keep your head down and wait for the world to reward your humility. But this is a trap, because the world doesn't reward humility. It rewards power that wears humility like a costume. And if you don't have the power yet, the costume consumes you. You become background noise, a harmless presence, a shadow no one fears or follows. Because what you thought was protection is actually erasure. Watch closely how the elites move. They build empires under your nose because they've mastered the art of hiding strength. They know that once the crowd sees you rising, it wants to pull you down, so they go quiet. Not because they lack confidence, but because their dominance is better preserved in silence. And this silence is strategic. It's the silence of someone who no longer needs to prove anything. But for you, early in your climb, silence is dangerous. It creates doubt. It lets others speak over you, decide for you, define you. And by the time you realize you should have spoken, stood tall, shown your worth, it's too late. The crowd already labeled you disposable. This is how the rich weaponize modesty. It's not morality, it's control. They let the world underestimate them so they can strike without warning. They appear harmless to remain untouchable. They praise frugality to manipulate the hungry. They glorify minimalism so no one asks where the money actually went. They feed the myth of simplicity while living lives of unimaginable complexity. And you eat it up. You imitate them, thinking the costume will give you their results. But you forget the one thing they had before they ever put on the mask: power. So let's be brutally honest. You don't need camouflage. You need visibility. You need to be seen, heard, respected. And that doesn't happen by shrinking. It happens by building weight, by walking into a room and making gravity shift. The rich can afford to vanish because their influence stays behind like perfume. But you, if you vanish, nothing remains. No one asks where you went. No one waits for your return, because you never claimed your place to begin with. They told you humility is a virtue, that modesty is noble, that keeping your head down will earn you favor. But look around, look closely. Is that really what you see rewarded? Do you see silent workers rising to the top? Do you see invisible men being given power? Or do you see the opposite, the loud, the bold, the visible? They ascend while the quiet are passed over, forgotten, buried under the myth of humility. You were taught to believe that if you don't ask, you'll be given. But that was never a truth. It was a leash, and the rich, they helped weave it. Understand this: when a poor man is humble, it is expected. It is invisible. It is worthless. But when a rich man is humble, the world applauds. Look at him, they say. So rich, yet so simple. But they don't applaud because he's simple. They applaud because he has the option not to be. His humility is a choice. Yours is a condition. And society does not reward what it expects. It rewards what surprises. That's why the same act, done by different hands, becomes two different stories. One inspiring, one ignored. The myth of humility only works in hindsight. Once you've succeeded, the story changes. They say you were wise for being quiet, patient, discreet. But if you fail, they say you lacked ambition. You weren't assertive. You didn't want it enough. Do you see it now? Humility is not a strategy, it's a gamble. And unless you're already holding power, it's a bet you will lose. Because modesty without status reads as weakness. Silence without strength reads as fear. And poverty with humility reads as irrelevance. The world doesn't listen to the unheard. It doesn't elevate the unseen. It steps on them. The rich praise humility out loud, but they don't practice it when it counts. They make noise when they negotiate. They flex when they need deals to close. They use their names, their networks, their reputations. They don't whisper until the throne is theirs. And then when they've won, when there's no risk of being overlooked, they suddenly become quiet sages. They sit in simplicity and let the myth grow. They let the crowd believe they got there by being humble. But it's a lie, a useful lie, a beautiful disguise that fools the hungry into staying small. It's dangerous, this myth, because it teaches the poor to aspire not to power, but to invisibility. It makes you think you're noble for not wanting too much, for not shining too bright, for not standing out. You begin to believe that wanting more is greed, that showing what you have is arrogance. But here's the truth. You don't lose because you're poor. You lose because you're quiet about it. You lose because you wear humility like a badge, thinking it will attract opportunity. It doesn't. It repels it. People want to follow those who radiate certainty, not apology. Ask yourself this. If you died tomorrow, who would notice? Who would remember you beyond a few days? If the answer scares you, good, because that fear is the cost of pretending you don't matter. That fear is the echo of a life spent hiding, shrinking, waiting. And while you waited, someone else walked in louder, bolder, less afraid of being seen, and they took what you wanted, not because they were better, but because they refused to be invisible. The world can't reward what it doesn't notice. And humility, if practiced too early, too often, becomes a cloak that smothers your presence. So be honest. Are you humble because you have the power to be, or because you were taught to be? Are you modest because you want to be, or because you fear the backlash of being noticed? Do not confuse fear with virtue. Do not call your silence discipline when it's actually paralysis. And most importantly, do not believe the myth that society loves humility. It doesn't. It loves winners who wear it as decoration, not strugglers who cling to it like salvation. A Roman emperor once walked through the streets of his empire wearing a plain wool cloak. The crowd praised him, called him wise, grounded, close to the people. But what they didn't see was the silent formation of guards trailing him, the spies watching from rooftops, the hidden network of alliances keeping every corner of that empire loyal. The cloak was not humility. It was strategy, a visual lie, a crafted image to disguise just how much power he held. And he knew if he looked too grand, they'd fear him. If he looked too poor, they'd ignore him. But if he looked just humble enough, they'd admire him. That balance is what made him untouchable. Elites don't wear simplicity by accident. They wear it like armor. Steve Jobs wore black turtlenecks, not out of necessity, but to project focused obsession. Mark Zuckerberg's gray t-shirts, carefully selected neutrality. Warren Buffett lives in a modest home, not because he has no other choice, but because it builds legend. The illusion of restraint is one of the most effective power moves there is. It makes people trust you. It makes people think you don't need to prove anything. But behind every act of simplicity is a mountain of influence, guarded and growing in silence. Look at how royalty behaves in modern times. They ride in black cars with tinted windows, wear subdued suits, carry themselves with an air of stoic elegance. The jewelry is discreet, the speech rehearsed, the public image curated. Why? Because power today no longer announces itself with loud robes and golden crowns. It hides in clean lines and soft smiles. The king who roars is dangerous, but the king who whispers, terrifying, because his moves are invisible. His enemies can't see him coming. That's the essence of elite disguise. Hide not your strength, but your intentions. Appear unthreatening until it's too late. Even in war, this principle thrives. Generals do not wear medals on the front lines. They wear camouflage. They blend into the terrain. The most dangerous man in the room is the one who looks like no one, because he's hard to track, harder to predict, impossible to isolate. And this same logic applies to business, politics, finance. The billionaire who shows off invites scrutiny. The one who disappears into the crowd while owning it. He moves freely, with less resistance. That's why you'll never spot the real wealth. It's not on display. It's moving quietly behind it. But here's what you must understand. All these case studies work because these people already possess power. Their disguise is effective because they can drop it at any moment. When they choose to reveal themselves, the world listens. Their names carry weight. Their networks move mountains. Their wealth demands respect. So their simplicity doesn't erase them. It enhances them. It adds mystery, mystique, myth. But what happens when someone without power tries the same? When a man with no name dresses plainly, he's not seen as disciplined, he's seen as average. When a woman with no platform speaks quietly, she's not seen as composed, she's forgotten. Simplicity without leverage equals disappearance. It does not signal strength, it signals surrender. And that's the trap. You try to copy the external behavior of the powerful without understanding the internal architecture behind it. You imitate the performance, not the preparation. You wear the cloak, but forget to build the army beneath it. So while you sit in silence, waiting for someone to discover your brilliance, remember this: kings don't wait, billionaires don't wait, emperors don't wait. They may act simple, but their ambition is ruthless. Their moves are complex. Their networks are vast. They don't pretend to be poor, they pretend to be harmless. And there's a difference. Harmlessness is an illusion. Poverty is a reality. And if you blur those lines, you will never escape the trap you were born into. The trap is subtle. It doesn't spring all at once. It coils around you slowly, like a rope tightening with every harmless choice. You think, I don't need to show off. You tell yourself, I'll stay low, build quietly. You believe that modesty will protect you, that blending in will buy you time. But while you hide, others take the spotlight. While you dress down, others dress the part. While you whisper, others speak with thunder. And by the time you realize what happened, your moment is gone. The room already decided who matters. And it wasn't you. This is the great irony of copying the rich. The more the poor imitate their simplicity, the deeper they sink into invisibility. Because the rich have built platforms that amplify their silence. You have not. When they vanish, their names still echo. When you vanish, no one remembers you were there. That's the brutal difference. You can't play invisible until you've made yourself unforgettable. Otherwise, the world will erase you without guilt, without notice, without a single moment of hesitation. I've watched men with raw brilliance dull themselves into mediocrity, not because they lacked skill, but because they lacked presence. They dressed like they didn't care. They spoke like they didn't matter. They moved like they had nothing to prove. And the world believed them. It took their silence as confirmation. It took their plainness as proof. And once the judgment was made, it didn't matter how bright they truly were. The door had already closed. Because when opportunity knocks, it doesn't knock twice, and it doesn't knock on invisible doors. The poor believe that looking simple will make them trustworthy, but in truth, it makes them replaceable. The rich already bought their way out of the game. They can pretend, you can't. Every glance, every first impression, every silent judgment, it's your test. And you don't get to explain yourself. You don't get to say, but I'm smart, but I'm kind, but I have potential. No one has time to listen to invisible men. The world is too fast, and the rich know this. That's why they use their wealth to vanish, but only after ensuring the world could never forget them. You see it everywhere. Influencers telling you to stay grounded. CEOs preaching the gospel of frugality. Millionaires filming minimalism videos in multi-million-dollar homes. They push the image down so you'll stay beneath them. It's not advice, it's containment. Because if you start acting visible, if you start dressing sharp, speaking boldly, owning space, asking for more, they lose control. Their simplicity is a costume worn to keep you docile. And the more you swallow it, the more you chain yourself to the bottom. Imitation, when done without context, becomes suicide. You mimic the outer shell, thinking it holds the secret. But you forget. The rich built foundations before they wore disguises. They earned the right to hide. You're still climbing, you're still proving, you're still invisible by default. And if you wear their costume without their power, you disappear by accident instead of by design. You don't become mysterious, you become forgettable. The truth is painful, but it will set you free. You cannot afford to look poor. Not yet. Not until your name carries weight. Not until your silence screams. Not until you've built something the world cannot ignore. Until then, Every second you blend in is a second you bury your chances. You think you're buying safety, but you're paying for irrelevance. The crowd will never admit this, but they love wealth. They adore it. They kneel for it. Not openly, of course. In public, they curse the rich. They call them greedy, corrupt, undeserving. But in private, they fantasize, they worship, they dream of switching places. And this contradiction, this emotional war inside the masses, is the force you must understand. Because it's not logic that shapes your fate, it's perception. And perception, especially when soaked in envy, is the most dangerous force in the world. You think appearing poor makes you safe. You think dressing down will shield you from judgment, envy, attack. But it won't. It will do the opposite. Because when you look poor, the crowd doesn't see you as safe, they see you as weak. And the weak are not respected. They're tolerated at best, stepped on at worst. People don't envy the humble, they ignore them. And ignoring is more fatal than hating, because hatred, at least, keeps you visible. Hatred remembers your name, indifference erases it. Now look at the elite. They don't fear envy, they weaponize it. They create just enough distance, just enough mystique, to provoke admiration, wrapped in resentment. They let you see the mansion, but only from a distance. They post the photo, but not the process. They flash the lifestyle, but pretend it came easy. Why? Because envy makes you pay attention. It locks your eyes on them. It drives obsession, and obsession is influence. The crowd is addicted to what it can't touch, and the rich make sure to stay just out of reach. This is why simplicity, when performed by the powerful, becomes a paradox. The crowd sees it and thinks, he's just like me. But deep down, they know he's not. And that tension, the illusion of sameness wrapped around undeniable difference, is what creates influence. It's why the billionaire in a hoodie commands more attention than the beggar in the same clothes. The context changes the meaning, and the masses know it, even if they won't say it. They pretend to respect modesty, but their attention always follows dominance. You have to stop listening to what people say they admire and start watching what they follow. They follow confidence, command, style, status. They flock to presence, and presence is visual first. It doesn't matter if you're a genius, if you dress like a ghost. It doesn't matter if you have character, if you blend into the wall. The world is too fast to stop and discover you. You must demand to be seen, because the masses do not give attention freely. They give it to those who take it. And envy only grows when the contrast is sharp. When someone who looks like a king walks through a world of peasants, heads turn, hearts race, people feel something. That emotion, jealousy, curiosity, admiration, that's the beginning of power. You want to avoid it. You think it's dangerous. But the truth is, it's necessary. Envy means they see you. Envy means they feel you. Envy means your presence is felt, even in silence. And the rich know this. That's why they walk softly, but carry thunder. But if you think you can avoid envy by looking poor, think again. The masses will envy you the moment you rise, no matter how quiet you are, no matter how modest you dress, no matter how humble you speak. So you might as well own it. You might as well control the image, because they will project something onto you either way. Let them project power, not pity. Let them fear you, not forget you. Let them talk behind your back, not walk past you like you're made of air. In every room, a silent sorting begins the moment you enter. Eyes scan, judgments form. No words are exchanged, yet a decision is made. Who commands, who obeys. And it's not based on character, not intelligence, not even reputation, unless it precedes you like thunder. It's based on appearance, on signals, on cues, so subtle most never notice them. But they decide everything. Social hierarchy is not declared, it's felt, it's immediate. And if you don't control the image you project, others will assign you a place without your permission. Clothes speak, posture speaks, silence speaks. The cut of your suit, the quality of your shoes, the way you enter a room, these things scream status or submission. People don't wait to hear you talk. They've already filed you into a category before your first word. Are you alpha or background? Threat or non-factor? Leader or extra? These decisions are made in seconds, often subconsciously. And if you look poor, tired, invisible, you're placed at the bottom. No one asks if it's temporary. No one cares if it's unjust. Society sorts fast. And once you're sorted, it's hard to escape the shelf they've put you on. Even among the poor, there is a hierarchy. The man who wears his poverty with style commands more respect than the one who surrenders to it. A sharp haircut, clean shoes, upright posture, these things create illusion, and illusion is often more powerful than reality. You don't need to be rich to look sharp. You don't need millions to carry presence. But you do need awareness, because the game is being played whether you accept it or not. Denying it doesn't change it. Opting out only guarantees your placement at the bottom. The rich understand this hierarchy instinctively. That's why they invest in presence, even when they claim to ignore it. They know that power is partly performance. That status must be signaled, not just possessed. It's why a millionaire may drive a basic car, but only after he's already proven himself through other channels: business, reputation, network. Without those, the basic car is just a basic car. No one projects power onto it. No one assumes depth. But when status surrounds you like a scent, even your silence becomes intimidating. You must never forget that humans are animals. Social animals. We size each other up constantly. Who is above? Who's below? Who deserves attention? Who can be ignored? And in the jungle of modern life, your appearance is your roar. If you mute it, you become prey. It doesn't matter how good your intentions are. The world does not promote goodness, it promotes presence. And if your look says, "I'm nobody," the world will believe you. There are men with less money than you who command more respect because they understood this. They took what little they had and turned it into signal. They polished their image, not out of vanity, but survival, out of strategy. Because they knew that looking broke meant being treated as broken. And once you're seen that way, you're at the mercy of everyone else's perception. You're boxed in, and no amount of skill or soul will get you out unless you first change how you're seen. So ask yourself, what do people see when you enter a room? What signals are you sending on purpose or by accident? Are you projecting command or invisibility? Are you rising up the ladder or being filed into the bottom rung by silent eyes that never gave you a chance? Because if you don't master how you appear, you forfeit control of your place. And someone else with less talent and more image will take the spot that could have been yours. Opportunity doesn't knock on every door. It knocks on the doors it can see. And when you look poor, when you blend in, dress down, speak softly, move like a shadow, you become invisible to the very forces that could change your life. This is the hidden cost no one tells you about. Every job you don't get, every meeting you're not invited to, every connection that never forms, not because you weren't qualified, but because you never looked like someone worth choosing. Invisibility is not neutral, it is a tax, and the poor pay it daily. There's a reason access is reserved for the visible. Decision makers are overloaded. They don't have time to vet everyone, so they use shortcuts, signals, presence, sharpness, confidence, aesthetic. They look at the packaging and make lightning-fast calls. This one has potential, that one doesn't. And once they decide, they rarely go back. Because in their world, attention is currency, and giving it to the wrong person is a risk they can't afford. So they bet on what looks like it can win, and discard what looks like it already lost. You may believe the world is fair, that people will see your heart, that one day someone will notice your work ethic, your loyalty, your brilliance. But you're lying to yourself, because they won't. Not unless you force them to. Not unless your appearance, your energy, your image, your command demands attention. And if you're dressed like a ghost, moving like a whisper, waiting like a beggar, no one will ever come. Not because you're unworthy, but because they never knew you existed. This is why pretending to be poor is fatal, because it trains the world to treat you as disposable. It lowers your price tag in every room. It whispers weakness when you need to scream value. It closes doors you didn't even know were open. It creates silence where your name should have been mentioned. It turns allies into strangers, mentors into passers-by, opportunities into missed calls. And the worst part, you won't even know it's happening. You'll just feel stuck, invisible, cursed, wondering why nothing's moving, while the answer stares back at you in the mirror. And don't mistake this for vanity. This isn't about buying expensive clothes or faking wealth. This is about controlling your signal, owning your narrative, broadcasting your presence in a world that's tuned to ignore silence. Because every day you walk past a gatekeeper without being noticed is a day lost. Every moment you let yourself look powerless is a moment you teach the world to treat you as such. And those moments compound into years. into missed paths, into a life half-lived. The rich know this. That's why they don't just build wealth, they build signal. They construct presence. They design their look, their space, their tone of voice, their timing, not for ego, for power. Because they know the world rewards those who look like they belong at the table, even if they had to crawl there in silence. And once they've arrived, they can choose invisibility as a tool, but not before, never before. So if you've been playing small, if you've been dressing down, hiding in crowds, muting your voice in the name of modesty, understand this. You are not being noble. You are sacrificing access. You are burning bridges before they are even built. You are paying the highest price for the lowest return, and no one is coming to thank you for it. The world does not applaud the invisible. It forgets them. You don't need millions to look like power. You don't need a throne to carry the weight of a king. What you need is control, not over the world, but over the way the world sees you. Because presence is an illusion before it becomes a reality. And every powerful man you admire before he had wealth, status, influence, he learned how to shape perception. He learned how to walk with gravity before the ground recognized his name. This is the counter-strategy, to appear powerful even when you are not. And it begins with choosing image as a weapon, not a weakness. Start here. Your posture. The way you enter a room matters more than what you say once you're in it. Enter slowly. Don't fidget. Don't rush. Let your silence stretch longer than the average man can handle. That tension you create, that's control. Weak men fill space with noise. Strong men make space obey them. Eye contact, stillness, measured movement. These are the first tools of presence, and they cost nothing, but they pay in respect. Because even without money, if you look like you know something the rest don't, you'll be treated like you do. Next, your clothing. It doesn't have to be expensive. It has to be intentional, fit over flash, simplicity over chaos. Clean shoes, sharp lines, neutral colors, minimal distractions. Not to look rich, but to signal order, to tell the world, I govern myself. Because those who appear in control of themselves are assumed to be in control of more, and assumptions rule perception. The man who dresses with discipline is treated as disciplined. The man who dresses with chaos is treated as forgettable. This is the language of signal. Speak it well. Your words, use them like blades. Not every thought needs to be said. In fact, the less you speak, the more weight your words carry. Practice restraint. Don't explain yourself unless it's strategic. Don't overshare. Mystery is leverage. If they can't read you, they can't predict you. And what can't be predicted can't be controlled. Speak in deliberate tones. Let silence sit heavy after you talk. Make others fill the space. That's how the powerful move. They never chase understanding. They command it. And above all, your energy. Presence is felt before it's seen. Are you rushed, anxious, apologetic? Or are you calm, grounded, unshakable? People don't follow credentials. They follow certainty, even if it's an illusion. Especially if it's an illusion. Walk like your path is already carved, like you know something they don't, like you belong because you decided you do. That decision is your shield, your armor. The world can take your money, your title, your platform, but it cannot take conviction unless you give it away. This is how you rise without riches. This is how you dominate without declaring war. You move like your future self already exists, and everyone else is just catching up, and in time they will. Because perception repeated and reinforced becomes reputation, and reputation opens doors that credentials never could. That's how the rich climbed before they had anything to show. They mastered the art of looking inevitable, of behaving as if their success had already occurred. And the world, confused but captivated, made room for them. So stop waiting for money to give you permission. Stop waiting for status to teach you presence. You must signal it before you're validated. That's the game. That's how you win in silence. That's how you flip invisibility into intimidation. You're not faking it, you're forecasting it. And there's a difference. The former seeks to deceive. The latter dares the world to believe. Never pretend to be poor. Not for sympathy, not for safety, not even for strategy. Because once you put on that costume, the world forgets it's a disguise. It treats you like it's real. It pays you less. It respects you less. It listens less. And worst of all, it remembers you that way. The moment you shrink, the moment you dull your shine, lower your voice, downplay your worth, the world adjusts its perception, and it does not reset when you're ready to rise again. It keeps you where it found you. This is the final law. Never surrender your image, not even temporarily, because power is sticky, so is weakness. Once you wear it, it clings to you, and people will project that weakness onto every word you say, every room you enter, every opportunity that should have been yours. You'll have to fight twice as hard just to be seen the way you used to be before you decided to tone it down, play it safe, or be humble. There is no glory in being ignored. There is no dignity in being mistaken for powerless. You think pretending to be poor protects you from envy, from judgment, from attention you're not ready for. But here's the truth. No one envies the invisible. No one judges the unthreatening. And if you think staying quiet will save you from attacks, you've already lost. The world doesn't punish you for being too loud. It punishes you for being too weak to be heard. It doesn't fear the arrogant. It fears the competent. It fears the sharp, the bold, the ones who know what they are and never apologize for it. When you pretend to be poor, you train yourself to accept less. You train others to expect less. You invite disrespect dressed as simplicity. You give permission for your value to be underestimated, then wonder why no one sees you, because they can't. You've erased yourself. You've taken your power and hidden it under the lie of modesty. And for what? To fit in, to be safe. There is no safety in submission, only slower defeat. Do you want to know why kings fall? It's not because they lose money. It's because they forget to carry themselves like kings. They begin to explain. They begin to apologize. They begin to blend in with the very crowd they once ruled. And the moment that happens, the spell breaks, the perception collapses, and the people who once bowed begin to walk past without looking. That's the fate of those who shrink too soon, who disarm before the war is over, who pretend to be less for the comfort of others. You were not born to camouflage. You were born to command. And every time you pretend to be poor, whether in spirit, speech, posture, or image, you betray that command. You signal that you are unsure, undeserving, afraid, and the world responds accordingly, not with pity, but with silence, not with comfort, but with cold indifference, because no one will reach down to pull up someone who chose to disappear. So carry yourself with weight, even when you're broke, even when you're building, even when you're doubted. Especially then, that is when your presence matters most. That is when the mask of power must become your second skin, not to lie, but to lead, not to boast, but to signal your arrival before the world is ready, because the world is never ready. It must be told. Let others shrink. Let them play poor. Let them blend in. Let them bathe in modesty while starving in silence. But not you, not anymore. From this moment forward, understand this one truth, etched in fire, sealed in blood. Never, under any circumstance, pretend to be poor. If you've made it this far, it's because a part of you already knows you can't keep living invisible. A part of you has already felt the cost of blending in, of shrinking, of wearing a mask that erases you. True power begins the moment you decide to stop pretending to be less, when you choose to carry yourself as if your worth is non-negotiable, even if it makes others uncomfortable, even if it costs you their approval. Now tell me in the comments, are you ready to be envied, doubted, even resisted in the name of your own ascent? Are you willing to pay the price of being seen? If this message struck you, if it woke something up, write in the comments, I will never hide my power again. Let's see how many here are ready to step out of the shadows and claim their place. And don't forget, keep watching the next video. It's important, much more than you imagine. See you there.